Welcome to the Coherent Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Jemima House. This is episode 2 of 7 in this week's special for ethical founders crossing the £1 million turnover mark. The title of this episode is Why Your Company is Built to Exhaust You. So we know that it's not built that way on purpose. We know you didn't build it that way on purpose. However, let's dive into why this is the case. So running a business and leading a team means carrying a lot of friction. I want to talk today about reducing that. So specifically, the exhaustion of holding operations together, internal politics, information distortion. It boils down to the fact that managing people is tiring and people have certain needs and certain desires, and when we're in the business of running a business, that can become complex really quickly to take good care of the people at the same time as taking care of the business. So for many, many years, conventional advice pushed founders to hustle harder, to add management layers or more measurement in order to find flow. But true strain persists because modern conscious enterprises, particularly ethical ones, are operating inside a model that was built for a completely different era. Now, I want to really stress that this is not on purpose. This is just what we've inherited. And when you start to examine what happens on the ground, you begin to see the story of how operational fatigue exists. So much human energy gets treated as just a resource to be spent until it runs out. That, of course, causes problems with retention and the people who joined because of their passion either burn out or they start to develop unspoken resentment because of the way things are. So even those who arrive with the deepest of dedication, wanting to contribute meaningfully to a shared vision of better things, they tend to find themselves slowly ground down by processes that were designed for control. So consider how this plays out in the day-to-day of a growing company, because you're either growing or you're going under. That's pretty much how business operates nowadays. Meetings multiply. Check-ins turn into weird status updates that don't solve anything. People end up walking away feeling like they've spent their day talking about work, but not actually doing anything that moves anything forward. So the sense of satisfaction is reduced. The collective attention of the team fractures because the structure itself demands constant vigilance. How is that so? Well, people tend to spend a fraction of their cognitive bandwidth executing their actual role, so their actual job, and a far larger portion navigating either other people's lack of people skills or internal politics, or both. And this environment leads to a really specific kind of exhaustion when every cross-departmental request requires interpretation before formal approval, momentum dies. There's no choice. And then the knock-on effect of that is that teams stop experimenting. They stop bringing forward creative ideas because what's the point? Disheartened to the max. The invisible tax of getting something approved outweighs just keeping their heads down and doing what they need to do to get by. So it leads to this stagnation, which is really sad, especially when the company was built to do something really good. Information flow suffers the same fate. It gets bogged down by second guessing and lots of delay. By the time a decision finally reaches the helm, it's been filtered so heavily that it no longer resembles the origin. So leaders end up reacting to an airbrushed version of reality. And if the numbers aren't matching up to the KPIs, the reflex is to scramble by adding metrics, meetings, oversight, attempting to solve structural issues with behavioural bandages while keeping teams trapped in a system that just depletes them. So this leads to leaders looking around and wondering why their teams lack initiative, and it's very hard to see when you're inside something the scope of that container that is being upheld, and to be able to see clearly how it punishes initiative. It basically creates a profound sense of isolation at the top. So the founders and CEOs find themselves kind of trapped in this impossible performance role. Sitting at the apex means that they are so far removed from the bottom that they miss any nuanced feedback, and they end up being detached from what's really going on. And we can see this dynamic play out in subtle ways across every department. When accountability is treated like a top-down enforcement mechanism rather than a personal internal baseline, people start managing perception instead of managing reality. I mean, think about this. If the people spend energy protecting themselves from failure rather than taking creative risks, what happens? The culture itself starts to lean towards defensive survival and away from genuine innovation. And this happens because teams are constantly trying to anticipate what the layer above them wants. This takes away the focus from the clients, the service users, the mission, the craft. Energy gets absorbed by what's going on inside the structure itself. So people tend to master the art of looking productive while guarding their safety within a rigid hierarchy. And when a company scales inside this shape, the friction just increases. It persists no matter how much culture work is attempted, because the core issue is the shape of the container itself. For generations, the default setup has been the pyramid. This is one of the reasons why I'm so excited about the house method, because it's circular, it's brand new. the pyramid was built entirely around control through hierarchy, with power and authority sitting at this apex at the top, while the operational weight is pushed down to the base. Imagine a triangle. That geometry creates really severe consequences across every layer of the pyramid. So, stagnation point, isolation, friction. There is so much I could say about this. Honestly, it is going to take me more than 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep it brief. But the pyramid assumes that human beings function best when managed from above, ignoring the reality that sustainable energy and creative problem solving require coherence and collaboration, not control. If you look at the history of how human effort has been organised, the vertical model made sense for moving physical goods or for commanding an army. That is not what we're doing now. It was built for obedience, for predictability, for manual output. The world is a different place now, and especially as ethical companies, we care about different things. We care about the humans. Modern enterprises are no longer running in this way. When you're trying to run a conscious enterprise through a 19th century hierarchy, it's like trying to run advanced software on a really, really old computer. Everything just breaks. Everyone gets frustrated. It's not recommended. So the alternative involves changing the geometry altogether, replacing that vertical extractive pyramid with a circular operating framework like the house method. It anchors the vision in the centre and it distributes agency outward, which allows the operational health and the human well-being to become the natural baseline of the business. Okay, I'm going to stop for today, but I'm back tomorrow. I am here all week talking to you about why this is so necessary right now. Check out the show notes if you want to talk to me and book in a call.